Hi, David. Hi, everyone.
Hey, good to see you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How's Italy this morning?
It is fantastic. Had my double espresso, so I am psyched for a session because it feels like a flash to the past because you and I have deep roots. We've been friends for so long, and now we're both working in a coaching space. So yeah, really excited to reconnect.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I believe we even published a paper together at one point.
Is that right? Okay. I have to admit, cards on the table, after you publish like 400 something papers, you lose track. What did we publish? I want to look this up now.
I looked it up the other day. I think it was something on the WHO SAGE data on global aging, which I think is
Very
very
cool.
relevant, but not for today. It
Very
reminded me,
cool.
though, that we've completely changed our way of working. So we used to hang out at conferences and say, hey, why don't we write a paper together? Now we hang out on social media and say, why don't we do a video together or a live together?
Yeah.
I think that's really cool and exciting, and hopefully it allows more people access to people like you and to access to things that might help them. And the reason I reached out and suggested we do this was because some of my clients, some of my coaching clients who are thinking of a different direction in their career sometimes think of doing a PhD. They think maybe taking time out, studying something that I'm really interested in would be great. Sometimes they think it might help them in their career. For example, I have a client who was in finance and is now doing a PhD in organizational psychology. And then the other day, someone who's a very successful coach reached out, and she said, she invited me to her podcast, and she asked me, like, what's it like doing a PhD? Because she's thinking about doing one, because she thinks it might help her work as a coach. So I thought we could spend some time together answering 1, 2, 3, 4 questions that might be on people's minds as they've gone through a part of their career, and maybe in their late 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s or later, and thinking, oh, can I do a PhD? So I want to start maybe by introducing you. And by the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm Aitsi-Selmi. I'm a transformational coach, and I specialize in careers and leadership. And I'm really interested in the success trap. So the experience where you've got success, but it's not quite what you want anymore, and you're wondering what you do next, for example, a PhD. And David here is probably one of the youngest professors, maybe the youngest professor I've ever met. And he was a graduate from Yale and then went to Cambridge, Oxford, Cambridge.
A few different places. Not so young anymore. Get some gray hair and definitely receding hairline. It's coming back, but yeah. No, I mean, thanks. I mean, I had a lot of bumps along the way, right? I had none of my parents had gone to grad school. I grew up in a small town in the south of the U.S. where, let's say, there were gaps in education, and I had a lot of bumps. I mean, I flunked out my first year of undergrad, and every mistake you can possibly think of, I probably made. And flash forward, I worked very hard, got a lot of support and mentorship that helped me get to the next level. Became a professor on the tenure track at Harvard, and later became a full professor in Oxford when I was 30. Now I'm happy in Milan as a professor, and I created a program, Fast Track Grad, to really provide a lot of that support in mentorship for a lot of students who fall into so many pitfalls, get their backs into a wall, panic, and feel lost and directionless. And so I created this program to help them make the most out of their investment in themselves. So yeah, really pleased to chat with you, Amina, because a PhD truly is transformational if you're doing it for the right reasons. And I think it'd be great to talk about that. It may be of interest to some of the people you work with too, because I get a lot of mid-career professionals who think about, hey, could this be an option? Could this help me transition in my career path?
Yeah. So maybe let's start with that, the motivation. What's the right motivation, or what would you say to someone who's trying to figure that out?
So let me just quickly flip that and rule out the wrong motivations. So I think during the time of coronavirus, a lot of people found, I've got some free time on my hands. Maybe I can dip my toe into the water and try something new. And what about a PhD? And I would say, if you don't really know what you want to do, a PhD is not the best path. Because to really get the most value out of a PhD, it's a bit like an apprentice system. You're kind of going to want to sit at the feet of a guru and learn from them and have them pull you into a field and pass on some intimate, detailed, specialized knowledge. So really what's really important in a PhD is knowing who you want to work with. And I would put that above almost everything, above the institution, is finding the right person who can play a mentorship role and support you along the path. The other reason not to do a PhD is because you think it's going to make you more money. And it can unlock career opportunities. But if you just want to look in sheer financial terms, the amount of time and energy you're going to put in for that return on investment, there are better paths if you're just trying to optimize financially. So I definitely advise against a PhD if it's purely financial considerations.
Okay. And so what might the right reasons to do a PhD be?
Central ingredients. So a PhD is a long road. It's definitely in this category of overall high work, low financial reward. But there is intrinsic reward. If you love what you do and you're passionate, you have that burning passion in your eyes, you love getting out of bed in the morning, you can't wait to talk to somebody about organizational psychology or what you're doing. If you need that spring in your step, because things are going to get hard in the roller coaster that is a PhD. You're going to have ups and downs. So that burning passion has to be there. And one of the greatest rewards that academics do have is the freedom to pursue things that they're passionate about. So one reason, if you have a really core passion for an area. Two, if you think in a career path that you can unlock access to funding, other things that can help you advance in a career. I see this a lot in people who want to advance in the UN, for example. They sometimes feel they hit a glass ceiling and they just need to tick the box to get a PhD to unlock higher levels. Then they want a PhD not because specialized skills, but because they really want to get to the next level in their careers. And that's really, there's actually a different approach you want to take with that's just to tick the box of a PhD. And then the third is if you really want to gain some new skills. And I think that's really important. Some people, maybe you work in finance, like you mentioned, and you realize, hey, there's actually a lot of insights in the market that I see rich insights from psychology that I think I could tap and bring into my field. In that case, I would think very hard and carefully about doing that, because sometimes you may be better off just hiring somebody and bring them on your team who has that expertise, rather than developing that detailed knowledge yourself, which could take you between 3 and 5 years to acquire. But if you really do feel like you want the skills, you really need to hunt and be wise in the investment you're making. Make sure the program you're going into has the right support structure and the right training place where you will get those skills. I've seen too many students jump into a program because it has a great fancy name on the tin, but by the end of it, they haven't actually gotten what they need career-wise.
Right. I think Alain de Botton, who founded the School of Life, said something like, in your early 30s or something, when you hit the 30s, it might be a good time to step back from the treadmill and take some time to reflect and maybe do a PhD. Do you think that's a valid reason?
So, it's interesting. When I was, I remember coming up through Yale at the time, and some professors gave me the advice that, okay, in your 20s, get intellectual capital, and in your 30s, focus on social capital. I'm not sure I fully agree with that advice now. And I'm not sure why Alain makes that suggestion for the 30s, because I do think it's helpful to go into a PhD where you define an end in sight and you define really the right reasons what you want to get from it. Just too many people I see go in because they're not sure what to do with themselves. They like being in school, they're intelligent people, and it's kind of like they've stumbled into a dark cave and they're just kind of wandering around, grasping for a road, and it's very time inefficient. And over 1 in 3 students who start on a PhD don't finish. And it's just a terrible loss on investment. And much of that can be avoided by doing the things you need to do before diving into it. So certainly if you're thinking about a career change, it can be an option, can help you transition to a new field. But I certainly wouldn't recommend everybody in their 30s start thinking about a PhD.
Right. And so picking up on that point of preparing before, where should people start if they're thinking, okay, I need to sort of take a step back from my day-to-day work and start preparing maybe or investigating this option of a PhD? Where should they start? I remember being advised when I was starting my PhD, to look at the, like you said, the supervisor or who it is you'll be working with, looking at the institution, make sure it's a good home, it provides you with the resources and the encouragement and the support, and obviously the topic, the thing that you're researching, making sure that you are interested in it. And institutions will look at you as a candidate, so you may need to tick some boxes there. Not that I encourage box ticking, but sometimes.
Yeah, so there's definitely an approach of you optimizing your chances to get in. That is in a way another conversation. I really like reaching out to students in programs as well, because your experience will most closely correlate with theirs going through the program. And that can often give you kind of some unfiltered insights into what the daily reality is like at that institution, working with that particular supervisor, and also seeing their career trajectory afterwards. So if you want to get a PhD to help launch you to a next level in your career, but none of those students have been able to make that transition afterwards, you just know going in that you're trying to chart new ground and break a new path. And that may be perfectly okay, and you may very well be able to do it, but it could be harder than if that ground is already well trodden by students who have gone through that program. So I also like focusing on the students. I definitely suggest reaching out to potential supervisors and mentors just to already get a feel of how open are they to you. Are they willing to engage? I remember I got into a PhD at an Ivy League school in the US, and I went and talked to one guy who on paper looked fantastic. And I just wanted to have a chat with him about the areas. And at one point in the conversation, he said to me, well, there's nothing you can tell me that I don't already know. I thought, aha, this is probably not a guy who I want to work with. And they're just things you won't be able to see on the websites and on paper. You won't really be able to know until you get in a conversation, ideally face-to-face with some of these folks. Because remember, this is a huge investment you're making in yourself. You're taking time out of the workforce to gain very specialized skills and knowledge, right? You think of all the time you spend buying a house. Well, effectively, you're making the same kind of investment in your PhD. So you really want to do your homework.
And by the way, on the skills, you mentioned specialized skills. What kind of skills do you think are really helpful in today's workforce?
Wow. I mean, there are many that translate and across fields. So obviously, one that's very hot at the moment is getting data mining skills, being able to see and listen with data. And that can take you, that can help you in many walks of life. Whether or not you're doing that analysis yourself, maybe for leading big teams that try to use data to generate new insights, new directions. Another area is certainly writing and effective communication. It's an area that scientists tend to be good ones, very clear, precise, and definite, understanding the level of detail and granularity that can be necessary. So writing and communication is one skill that you should improve along the way. The other is working under pressure, especially under pressure, to take evidence, synthesize it very quickly, and say something meaningful with it. And we live in a world that's full of information and a lot of noise. As a PhD, the successful students will learn to take the signal out of that noise and do something meaningful with it. And through the rhythms and routines you do as a grad student every day, this is a skill that you'll be practicing day in, day out, and you will improve at.
Right. Great. So again, speaking to the idea to be precise and clear on your goals for a PhD. Now, some people might be doing a PhD who are listening today, and they're wondering, well, what can I do while I'm doing the PhD to make sure I re-enter the workforce efficiently and successfully?
So I particularly like, so for the category, there are a lot of doctors I work with who maybe are in a position where they have the medical degree, but to get grant funding, they need a PhD, but they already feel good, like they can do research. And there are some very efficient routes to the PhD that can enable you to keep working while doing the PhD. And with a few little tweaks, maybe some things you're already doing in your daily work to help you start publishing papers. And that's a path I really like. It's probably the path I wish I would have done. And that's a PhD by publication. And I don't know if you're aware of this or your listeners are so aware of it, but this path essentially captures what is the essence of a PhD, because the essence of a PhD is you are going to do some original research And then you're going to stitch that up and send it off to some independent people in the field who don't know you, who are going to look at it and say, hey, this is a contribution to our field. This person has pushed the forefront of our field. And you're making a transition to being kind of a passive consumer of information to an active producer of new knowledge in your area. Mm-hmm. So what a PhD by publication does is basically you focus on publishing papers in peer-reviewed journals. Mm-hmm. You can see how that's effectively the same process of what a PhD is meant to be. And so when you get to about 3 or 4, it depends on the field, 3 to 4 published papers that have gone through independent peer review, there are institutions that will say, hey, well, this person has obviously made that journey, that transition, and is producing actively in the field as acknowledged by these independent experts. This constitutes a PhD. Mm. And I like this a lot because instead of like kind of playing in the playground, writing chapters in a conventional PhD, you're actually doing real world things, publishing papers that see the light of day and have impact. It's like, well, why play in the playground when you can play in the big leagues? So I really like that path for a lot of mid-career professionals. But to do it, you need a lot of support in place. And what's nice is you can do it on your terms. Yeah. And I think for a lot of mid-career professionals, the idea of going, and maybe you want to do this as part of your transformation. Maybe you want to go be in a conventional PhD cohort, move to an institution somewhere. But I think COVID has changed the world where there's a lot of power of online digital communities that can provide support that conventional programs can't match anymore. And so I think for a lot of the mid-career people you work with, Amina, this could be a very compelling option.
Mm. Well, yes. And as a medic who did a PhD, I remember doing on-calls was another way to keep your sort of toe in the professional world. Some people did secondments. So for example, to the WHO, I think I did some stuff. Or to an institution you're interested in working with, you can say, I have these skills, can I come and help you with something? And then that creates a link, and then they end up working in that organization. So it's a nice stepping stone for that career transition.
100%. Just to add on that too, one of the things I really like, some of my PhD students who are the most effective, they use publication as a way to engage with and build connections with people in the field. There are a lot of people, you mentioned the World Health Organization as an example, maybe they want to publish papers, they don't have time, they want to build their authority and credibility in a space. And often if you're working on some research in that area, it's a natural bridge to reach out and build a connection. And not one where you're coming as a mendicant saying, oh, please, can you help me? But you're offering them something that's valuable to their career. It's just a very natural way to start a relationship with maybe somebody who's a strategic connection for you, but you don't personally know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so is it ever too late to do a PhD?
I've got a student in my program who's in her 80s doing a PhD, and she's doing it out of the genuine joy of learning, keeping her mind active, and wanting to make a contribution to the world. And she's fantastic. She actually pushes me very hard because I do find when students have that passion and that motivation that just things come naturally. They ask the right questions, they start gravitating to areas that will make real world impact. And I really like working with students who really want to make a difference in the world. And she's one of them. Yeah, I'm really proud of the progress she's made. She's just publishing her first paper now in her early 80s. So
what's the subject?
I don't think it's ever too late. There's a lot of richness that comes with older age. Several people who do the career transitions not in their 30s or 40s, but even when they were going into retirement. And this is a really nice, maybe you're not going to go be a professional tennis player at that stage, but you can certainly in a span of 3 years, even less, start making original contributions to knowledge that will be a legacy. And some people really like that idea.
Absolutely. And I think I'll add that doing a PhD probably did help me then transition into my own independent business, because I had to work alone, and I learned to self-manage and sort of be more entrepreneurial. So I have more of an entrepreneurial mindset, which I think helped. And I was curious what subject your wonderful 80-year-old student chose.
So she's working in a space of, I don't know if she wants me to brag about her. I feel like I'm just an agent for a lot of my students. I'm really proud of the progress that they make. But she's working right in the space around children's health and trying to understand different kinds of digital interventions that can better promote children's health. I think part of it, she has grandchildren, wants to create a better world for them, and can see how a lot of them have suffered in lockdowns, haven't had physical activity, and is actively searching for different ways that health systems can help children be more active and play. A very fundamental thing, but something that she really loves, and I think comes from her own observations in real life about seeing children are playing less and less than they did in the past.
Yeah, I think that's an inspiring place to land. You heard it here, everyone. There's an 80-year-old lady who's doing a passion research project. So don't be discouraged. It's never too late to do a PhD. So thank you so much, David. Where can people find you if they have more questions?
Oh, yeah. Look, I would love to welcome you to my exclusive Facebook group, Fast Track Grad, where I help you get on the fast track for your career. 100% free, lots of valuable training. You'll find a training there on the PhD by publication, so you can explore whether that could be the right path for you. And also a powerful community that will network you with people who are at different stages of their master's or PhD, postdoc, and beyond, all working to collectively support each other through what can be a difficult ride and journey. So yeah, please do reach out for me. I'd love to link you up to the group and give you some support there.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, David. Thanks everybody for listening. See you soon and stay well in the meantime. Bye-bye.